A landmark case brought before Ontario's Superior Court is challenging Canada's laws around sex work. The Canadian Alliance for Sex Work Law Reform and several individuals are arguing that the current laws violate provisions of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which in turn forces sex workers into unsafe conditions. The groups are asking that several sections of the Criminal Code be deemed unconstitutional. These sections criminalize advertising sexual services and communicating to buy or sell sexual services. Jenn Clamen with the Canadian Alliance for Sex Work Law Reform says there shouldn't be any criminal laws that are specific to sex work. Ms. Clamen joins us now to give us the latest updates in this case. Ma'am, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thanks for having us.
Now, 5 days of arguments for this case came to a close on Friday. So what were the main takeaways from last week's hearing in Ontario Superior Court, and what are the latest updates in this case?
It was a week full of energy from community. There were a lot of sex workers who showed up from across the country and locally to watch the case. A lot of people have really high stakes in the case. Over the past 7 years, sex workers' rights have been violated because of the new laws that were implemented in 2014. For sex workers in the case, it's really important that these violations are recognized and that their experiences of the laws are placed at the center of the discussion, and that we need to listen to those experiences.
Now, your group is arguing that the criminalization of sex work in Canada is, as you said, taking away the rights of sex workers and forcing them into unsafe conditions. So what does that look like through the lens of a sex worker in Canada?
Sex workers, because of the current laws, are forced to work in a context of criminalization. And what that means is that at any moment, and in all moments, sex workers and clients and third parties, the people who work with or for sex workers, are all avoiding detection from law enforcement. And what that means is that sex workers are forced into isolation. And though some people don't recognize, but when you're in isolation, it means you have a lack of access to supports should you need them. It means sex workers are not able to meaningfully communicate consent with clients because doing so is illegal. Sex workers are limited, if not prevented, from accessing health and social and legal services. And so the total context of criminalization actually puts sex workers in a context where they cannot access the means that they need to be able to protect their health and safety.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how these safety concerns of sex workers in Canada are being handled by authorities and police who are in charge of protecting our civilians?
Well, I think people take for granted what it means to be criminalized. And so if you can imagine or understand that when police are mandated to arrest clients, third parties, and some of whom are sex workers as well, everybody's avoiding law enforcement, and it really creates an antagonistic relationship with law enforcement. And so when people need access to law enforcement, should they ever need access to law enforcement, they don't necessarily have that access. And this is even more pronounced for communities that are over-surveilled and underprotected by law enforcement. So Indigenous women on the street, Black women, racialized women, migrant women, trans women, communities that are already over-policed and under-surveilled, who are targeted because of criminalization, because people who are predators know that sex workers won't go to police. And so it puts a target on sex workers' back, and they're unable to contact police as a result of the criminalization.
And we know sex work has been decriminalized in other countries, including New Zealand, a lot of countries in Europe. So what kind of impact has this made on the overall safety and well-being of sex workers there? Just a quick minute and a half left here.
Yeah, it's a huge impact. So in New Zealand, you have a context where sex workers are recognized under labor standards. There's a sex worker recently who went to a human rights tribunal and was awarded $250,000 for a sexual assault in her workplace. That wouldn't have been recognized as sexual assault in a context where all sex workers considered sexual assault. And so a decriminalized context means that sex workers have access to mechanisms to improve their working conditions, and to be able to fight for their rights as workers.
All right, Ms. Clamen, a quick 45 seconds left here. I really want to get this question in. So there are concerns around sex trafficking and the sexual exploitation of people. So how might the decriminalization of sex work impact these ongoing issues in our country?
Absolutely. The exploitation is actually the reason that sex workers brought forward this case, is because sex workers want that exploitation and violence in their lives to stop. When you have a criminalized industry, it actually allows exploitation to flourish. And so decriminalization really allows the identification of real violence rather than wasting a lot of resources on the sex industry where there might not be any violence.
All right, Ms. Clamen, thank you again for joining us today on Forum Daily.
Thanks for having me.